4. Pardon?
He's talking to me.
Oh, you got that? Okay, good. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 4 p.m. and we will call this meeting to order. I'm going to ask Ms. Fortner if she would read our general statement of who we are and what we do.
Good afternoon. This is a public hearing, and we are the Putnam County Planning Commission. We are the designated local planning agency for the county as described under Title 11, Chapter 163 of the Florida statutes, and we function under the authority of Articles 11 and 12 of the Putnam County Land Development Code. The primary responsibility of the commission is to serve as an advisory body to hear and make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on matters related to provisions of and proposed amendments to the Putnam County Comprehensive Plan and the Putnam County Land Development Code. The members of this committee will review each application and make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners at a regularly scheduled meeting on August 23rd, 2022. Procedurally, we will call each case by name and number. A member of the staff will then briefly explain to us the nature of each request. We will take comments from the applicant or their representative, followed by any public comments concerning the request. Please direct all comments or statements to the commission and not to other people in the audience. Before speaking, we will ask each person to be recognized, come forward to the lectern, and identify his or herself by name and address. After all persons wishing to speak have been heard, we will entertain a motion from the commission. This motion will be voted on by the commission members and become our recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners will make the final determination regarding the application. The first case to be considered is R22-003.
Before we move into that case, there are a couple of things, of housekeeping things we'd like to do. Mr. Hafner's going to read our statement of ethics.
Is this on? Yeah. As a member of the Putnam County Planning Commission, I pledge to come to meetings prepared for the items on the agenda, willing and ready to listen carefully and courteously to make informed decisions based on the facts presented and what I feel is in the best interest of the people and businesses of Putnam County. I will refrain from unnecessary interruptions, and I will be appreciative of and respectful toward applicants, members of staff, and other members of this commission. I will support the decisions made by the majority, and I will be fair and objective in all that I do as a member of the Putnam County Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Hafner. Directed to the board, has anyone had any ex parte communication about any of these cases?
I have.
Please declare that, and will it affect your voting?
No, it will not affect my voting. My communication basically has been through my wife with Miss Oliver. I wanted to check Miss McClendon. Sorry, baby. And make sure that she was aware of what was going on today, even though I know she's been contacted. She's been through some pretty strenuous things lately, and I just wanted to be sure that she was aware, and if she needed to come, that she could come.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else had any ex parte communication concerning either of the cases we have before us today? Does anyone have a conflict of interest they need to declare about either of the cases we have today? Okay, are there any refusals from today? I guess not, if we don't have anything else. Mr. Perry, did I miss anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay, at this time we'll move into case R22-003. Joe.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. For the record, Joe Searley, Planning and Development Services. This is rezoning REZ 22-003. The applicant is Neil Strickland. The application is the amended zoning map from residential single-family R1 and commercial retail C2 to commercial intensive C4 to allow for outside storage of fabricated metal panels. The applicant is Neil Strickland, who is here to represent the application as well. The subject property is located approximately 440 feet north of the intersection of Masters Road and South Highway 17. The current future land use is commercial and urban service. The current zoning district, again, is residential single-family R1 and commercial retail C2. The subject parcel is approximately 4.56 acres and is currently zoned both residential single-family R1 and commercial retail C2. Approximately 0.8 acres within the north portion of the subject parcel is zoned R1, and the southern portion was zoned commercial retail or C2. Applicant is requesting to rezone the entire parcel under the commercial intensive zoning district to expand upon the existing use to allow for both indoor and outdoor storage of fabricated metal panels. Here is an aerial of the parcel. Currently, it is vacant with some parking and a structure, the metal building. To the south of that parcel is the Deep South Metal Fabrication commercial enterprise. They are the ones that will be expanding onto this vacant parcel. As you can see, the zoning is R1 and C2 on this parcel. It does have a split zoning on a small portion to the north. The land use is similarly broken up with commercial to the south and urban urban service to the north. Sorry about that. This thing keeps going forward on me. So the current zoning designation does not allow for the outdoor storage component. If this rezoning were to be approved to C4, the applicant would be required to seek a special use permit in addition to the rezoning for the outdoor storage component. Per section 45-84 of the Land Development Code, the C4 zoning designation allows for the construction trades with outdoor storage use with the approval of a special use permit. The parcel has an underlying land use of commercial and urban service, and the commercial and urban service land use designation allows for both neighborhood and community commercial development along the State Highway 17 corridor. And this parcel is located in a portion of the corridor that existing commercial developmental lands with both urban service and commercial are encouraged. Portions of South Highway 17 currently have a water infrastructure which serve to encourage mixed-use development. I believe we got confirmation that there was a sewer line on the south side of Highway 17, is it correct? And currently subject property abuts Masters Road and Ferry Road and is surrounded by residential uses to the north. The parcel is surrounded by commercial zone parcels to the east, west, and south, and are currently operating as commercial entities. The North Groves residential subdivision to the north would be considered as a residential use, and the applicant will be provided, would have to provide a 20-foot wide Class B vegetated buffer between those uses to the north. Additional perimeter buffering would be required along all the vehicle use areas, and the outdoor storage areas would be required to provide a 20-foot wide Class B buffer between any residential use as well. And that Class B buffer consists of a 6-foot masonry wall or fence with 6-foot evergreen plants planted with 75% opacity, low-growing evergreen plants, and 8-foot evergreen canopy trees planted no more than 20 feet apart. So staff recommends approval of the request to amend the zoning designation from residential single-family R1 and commercial retail C2 to commercial intensive C4. The applicant is here to answer any questions from the commission as well as staff.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board to staff at this time? Maybe use the light on?
Yes, on that 25-foot buffer on the residential side, does that, if he puts up a concrete block, would that be on the at the 25-foot line and then the buffer be on the outside, or does he put the concrete block wall and put all this landscaping on the inside of the concrete wall?
That's a good question. I believe it could be a masonry wall or a wood fence. However, it's a 20-foot wide buffer, to clarify. It's not a 25-foot buffer. But typically, I think they could put it on the perimeter, but I think the landscaping would have to go to the outside.
Gabriel?
Madam Chairman, if I may.
Your mic's not on.
Oh, it's not.
Can we get the, yeah, you're on.
Okay, I just need to be very close to it.
Yeah, that's sensitive.
Normally, the landscaping would be on the inside, though for aesthetic purposes, I can see why the landscaping should preferably be on the outside, but it's easier to maintain it on the inside.
But you don't see it.
Right, you don't see it. So the proper aesthetic placement of it would be to have the landscaping on the outside. There's just no requirement in the code for it, but we can work with the applicant at the development review stage to have that done. Now, the concrete wall cannot be just exposed concrete block. It has to be finished with some sort of
Yeah.
stucco or something, or just a finished appearance, so.
That's, you know, I rode by and looked at that, and it's, you know, those houses are really exposed to, I think the landscaping should certainly go on the outside. And I've seen
Agreed.
before where they put, you know, they make people put up a block wall or something, and then they put landscaping on the inside. It, you know, that landscaping eventually goes away because it's just natural. It's inside, it's their property.
Right, and I agree, and normally that would be what we require at the development review stage. Sometimes it's been difficult when you have property owners adjoining that will not allow that property owner to step onto their property to maintain the landscaping, or it can be difficult when you have another fence
Yeah.
adjoining. But in this case,
situation, that's not the case.
right, exactly, it wouldn't be the case. So that's something that we could require at the development review stage, and certainly what would be appropriate for better aesthetics.
Thank you, Gabe.
I did have a question too. I sort of asked already, but was there any consideration given to keeping that small strip that is residential as residential versus making that portion C4?
No, ma'am, the request was simply to take the
Do it all.
entire parcel and change that entirely. I mean, they're still going to have the screening regardless, so it'll still be screened the same way as if it had adjoining residential on it, because
Right.
we're going to take the residential that's north of it into consideration.
Okay.
They'll still remain two parcels, but they'll both be Zone C4.
Right, so the subject request is only one parcel.
Okay.
But it currently has split zoning on it.
Okay,
So,
so it is one parcel with split zoning.
excuse me?
It is one parcel now.
Correct. It's
Okay.
one parcel. Now, there is another parcel that's not subject to this rezoning to the south, which is where the primary operation is.
Correct.
Right,
correct.
so that's not being affected by this
Right,
application.
this is just the additional space that they're requesting.
Right, I mean, it's going to affect the entire parcel to the north of that existing operation.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions?
Is there going to be any kind of buffering?
Not on. You're not on.
Oh, I can't. You sure? Hello?
There you are.
On the west side of this property, back towards where all the residential property is there going to be any kind of buffering required along, what's that road?
Masters?
Masters?
Master Road?
Yes, sir, there will be. If there's any kind of vehicular use area stretching out further along there, they'll have to put perimeter landscaping. So one shade tree every 50 feet and shrubbery, consistently spaced. So if there isn't any, then there would it just be an open field. So there wouldn't be a whole lot of sense in buffering it. But structures, vehicular use areas, all of those will have to be screened. And given the fact that the proposal is to have outdoor storage, we likely would simply require it at both the special use permit stage and at the development review stage, that the entire parcel be buffered as a Class 5 use or a Group 5 use, which is a more intensive use, so that they could just use the entire parcel without worrying about having to buffer every single time they expand their outdoor
That's
storage.
kind of why I was asking the question. I thought that was the case.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
What you're saying, the entire piece that we're looking at,
your microphone.
and which one you push here?
That one.
You're talking about putting the buffer around the entire 4 or 5 acres.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so at the special use permit stage, we would probably require that as a condition of approval.
But only for the residential and along Masters.
Masters and Ferry Road to the north.
Yes.
But as well, all four sides will be buffered, correct?
Right, so now the side to the south will not have to be buffered.
Because
They'll-
that's continuous of their.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. But we'll probably just request that they combine those parcels so that
Mm-hmm.
they don't have that property line there.
Okay. Any other questions of staff before we move to the applicant? Nope. Is the applicant present? Would you like to come forward and tell us about it and take any questions we may have for you? Please give us your name and address and,
Neil Strickland, 641 East State Road 100, San Mateo, my residence.
I think you're on.
Thank you. Am I turned on? Is it?
I think they'll tell, you have to get close to it.
Okay.
It's finicky.
Okay. We initially bought the property back in 2017 or 18, I believe. It may be a little before that. No, it was probably a little before that. We have our roofing business across the street on 17 at 151 Highway 17. We bought the piece of property. It was an abandoned building. It used to be the Lee Sheet Metal Building, and we bought that and then that's where our employees would meet in the morning, and we would go out to work. Since we bought the property, we started manufacturing metal. Started to do it as a sister company just to manufacture for Neil Strickland Roofing. But over the years, we've expanded, and now over half of the metal we sell goes to outside roofers. So we just need a little more room for our machinery and for some of our metal panels as we manufacture them to be able, before, they get picked up by roofing contractors. So we just needed to, we really wanted to move our fence, put another warehouse just right on the other side of the fence. The end down where the residential part was, we don't, for right now, have no plans to do anything on 3/4 of the property for right now, but getting it all zoned, if we ever needed another warehouse, we wouldn't have to go through the process again.
Okay. Do
as
you have
far
any
as-
problem with the vegetation
Not
being
at
on the
all.
outside?
The only
or in-
question I have is it required on that north end to have a block wall? We have a decorative vinyl fence up 6 foot now, a taupe fence that looks real nice. If I had needed a fence, I would have liked to be able to put something like that up, and if I even wanted landscaping in front of it.
Okay.
Landscaping on inside the fence, to me, doesn't make much sense. Nobody will see it.
Just easier to
And it just
maintain.
But outside, to make it look nice if you wanted that, but I'm willing to do.
Gabriel, could you or Joe answer that question? Would the vinyl fence suffice?
I believe the code calls for a masonry fence, or a masonry wall or wood fence.
That's just the north end?
Correct.
Okay, 'cause, if it had to go all the way, that'd be a pretty expensive fence, because it's a big piece of property, but,
Yes.
if I was able to use something besides masonry, fine. If it's required masonry, I'll do what I gotta do, but.
Okay.
I can address that in just a moment. I don't have a microphone, unfortunately. I'm going to ask IT to order one. But,
I think we do need to get our sound system upgraded a little bit. We've got some down and some working, and
oh, sure. Thank you. Okay, so
Okay. The type of buffer that's required is a Class B buffer, and I believe that the Class B allows for an alternative screening method. I'm pulling it up now. Let's see. Okay.
or would 6-foot masonry wall or fence?
Yeah.
That's kind of ambiguous there. Is it a 6-foot masonry wall or a fence?
Yeah, it really
Or is
doesn't
it a 6-foot
specify.
masonry wall or a 6-foot masonry fence?
Right, so they can do a 6-foot masonry wall or a solid wooden fence 6 feet in height, or a berm.
Does it have to be wooden, or could it be vinyl?
We've interpreted that to allow vinyl, just because wooden,
The vinyl have, I think, wood poles, and then it has the fence, those of you that have seen it, it's a nicer looking fence.
It is a
than
nice
wood
fence.
fence.
Looking, I agree with that.
And I'd be willing to do that, or whatever is recommended, so.
And that would be specified with an SUP?
yes, ma'am, we would, it's already required in the code.
Right.
So regardless of the SUP, they'll have to put that up, but,
Okay.
we would probably reiterate that as a condition or stated in the SUP staff report.
That a vinyl fence would be sufficient?
Right.
Okay. And that would be when you go before the board, the zoning board of adjustments.
So it would be the north end, get the vinyl fence, and everything else vegetation, a vegetative fence, is that what it is?
So you would have to have a 20-foot buffer, because that's going to be used for outdoor storage, you'd have to have a 20-foot
Just 20 foot
wide
wide of vegetation?
with vegetation, evergreen vegetation, and the fence or the masonry wall or the berm, which I wouldn't recommend a berm there, but all around the property, except for that southern property line where you joined C4 zoning already.
So you would interpret that then to mean that they could use a vinyl fence on those 3 walls, 3 sides?
Yes, ma'am.
A lot cheaper than masonry.
But you're saying it'd have to have the vinyl fence down the whole long
Yes, sir.
side also? Okay. Can I get a load for some of it? Well, you know, that's what it is.
We're getting ready to address the land development code, and I can assure you that's going to be a lively time. It's not going to be a short-lived process. We're not going to come together one week and get it done.
Right.
But we are going to be completely going back over that land development code and addressing some of these things that are somewhat ambiguous and, you know, contradictory. Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Strickland from anyone on the board? Mr. Danzel?
I have one for Mr. Strickland. How much noise is going to be added to, is it just strictly warehouse where you might have
Pretty
a
much
tow
strictly
motor going
warehouse.
back and
We
forth,
may
and you putting
at some
equipment in there
point-
that's going to make loud noises?
We may put another one of our machines in it that roll forms, but you don't hear them outside.
Okay.
at all. And really, there won't be any more traffic than we already have because the customer base we have, it'll still be pretty much, you know, the same. Just people pull in, get their materials and leave, or our personal crews from Neil Strickland Roofing pull in and get their materials. Usually, they meet at 7 in the morning, get their materials, and they're gone for the day.
Does the C4 classification address noise at all?
No, sir, it does not. We have the amplified noise ordinance, but in C4, for that kind of activity, light industrial manufacturing and the contractor trades with outdoor storage, both of those will require a special use permit. And at that point, the criteria for the SUP does address things like noise, smells, et cetera. So that's something that staff will have to analyze at the time that Mr. Strickland comes through for an application for those.
Yeah, I think what he's trying to do, he's not going to make any noise, but the problem is what happens 20 years from now, and you've already got it Class C4, and then they go back to that property line in the back and put something right there that makes noise. That was my
Right,
concern.
and-
I'm not concerned about him.
And that's why the special use permit, if it were to be expanded, if the property were to be sold, they would have to come back in and redo the SUP.
Cool. So it's almost like a PUD in a way.
Almost. I mean, it's for a single use.
Yeah.
Mr. Strickland, do you have any questions of us?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I got one other.
Mr. Hafner?
Neil, did the property on the south end, there used to be a sheet metal business there. Weren't there a
That
bunch of other
was
buildings
Lee's
there?
Sheet Metal, yes, sir. It closed down during that recession,
Yeah.
and we bought the property from the bank, and then we bought the other property from, it was, if y'all remember, that other big lot that I'm trying to get to rezoning, it was full of big, giant pine trees, and a homeless man living in the middle of it, so.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your coming today, and we
Well, thank you.
appreciate,
I appreciate your consideration, y'all
we
taking the
appreciate
time
the
here.
business you bring to Putnam County.
Thank you very much. This is our 41st year in business, in the roofing business, and in fact, I just retired last September. My son and wife and all of them are still down there working it, and I go in and help them, and I go a week to Alabama and a week here, so I'm enjoying it.
Congratulations.
After 40-something years on a roof, I was ready, so
Yes, sir. I can
thank you very much.
I can imagine that.
Thank you.
Are there any people in the audience that would like to speak either for or against this? Ms. McClendon, is this one that you wanted to speak about?
I had some questions and Neil's already answered them for me.
Awesome. Okay.
I just have one other question on the other property.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll bring it back to, is there anybody else who would like to speak either for or against this case? In favor of or in opposition to? Therefore, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion, put it on the table for consideration. What are your thoughts, board?
Madam Chairman, I'll move we approve case R22-003 as presented.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. DeSantis has seconded. We have a proper motion and a proper second on the floor. Is there any discussion?
I do have a little bit of heartburn over it because of, not Neil's use, but what may come down the road. I know we voted a few lots down against that C4, but that did front the highway, and it was more of a aesthetics from Highway 17.
Right.
So I'll just go on record as saying that, but, I mean, I tend to vote for it.
Okay. Any other considerations or concerns? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All those opposed, please say the like sign. This is passed unanimously. It will now go to the Board of County Commissioners at their August 23rd meeting. And you won't see us again, but you'll see the Zoning Board of Adjustments down the road. So good luck, and thank you again for what you do for Putnam County. Okay, our next case is R22-004. And Joe, I believe you have this one as well.
I do, ma'am. Thank you very much. For the record, Joe Searley, Planning and Development Services. Excuse me. This is an application from BDW Property Group to amend the zoning map from residential single-family R1 and commercial retail C2 to commercial general C3 to allow for access merchandise storage facility affiliated with the tire store currently under construction. The applicant is the BWT Property Management Group. The subject property is located 210 feet west of the intersection of South Highway 17 and Masters Road, adjacent to the one we just rezoned. The future land use is commercial and urban service. This also has a dual land use and also a dual zoning
Excuse
district.
me, Zach, can you project that with the full screen for us so it'll be easier to see?
Yep, sure can.
Sorry about that. There we go.
Okay. So yeah, this parcel also has a dual land use and dual zoning districts. The zoning is residential single-family R1 and commercial retail 2. The subject parcel is 6.96 acres approximately, and is currently zoned both R1 and C2. The applicant is proposing to rezone only a 2.9 acre portion of that parcel to commercial general C3 to allow for expansion of the storage facility associated with the tire store. The proposed use would also allow for additional commercial operations that would permit passenger vehicle sales, rental, and service, but would exclude auto body repair. Here is an aerial of the parcel. As you can see, it's on the west side of the Deep South Metals that we just you guys recommended approval on. Here is a proposed boundary survey of the area to be rezoned. As you can see, the sliver of land up north would be where they would take an access from Masters Road. Here is the zoning map. A portion of it is zoned residential single-family, other portion commercial. The land use of the northern portion of the parcel is urban service, and the southern portion is commercial, which they would both remain the same. So the current zoning designation does not allow for passenger vehicle sales, rental, and service. It only allows for very specific types of auto repair, such as tire, battery, and oil changes. The commercial general C3 zoning designation allows for the additional uses, however, excludes the body repair shops. This will allow for the additional repair uses and not limit them to the oil, battery, and tire repair. As the other one is, this parcel is located in a portion of the corridor that has existing commercial development on lands with both urban service and commercial land uses. Portions of the South Highway 17 currently have water infrastructure, which serves to encourage mixed-use development. And currently, the subject property abuts South Highway 17 and Masters Road. The proposed warehouse facility is proposed to take access from Masters Road based on site plan submitted with the application. Again, the parcel is surrounded by commercially zoned properties to the east-south of the subject property. Staff is recommending approval of the request to amend the zoning designation from R1 and C2 to C3. The applicant is here, and staff is here to answer any questions if you may have.
Is there any, what are the buffering requirements for C3?
I believe just for the parking areas, if they do plan on doing that. Other than that, it does not abut any residential uses.
Okay.
I don't believe it allows for outdoor storage, so there would be no special use permit required subsequent to this approval. But they, at the development review stage, we would look at their parking areas and see how we could mitigate any potential impacts on neighboring properties. But mostly it's commercial to the south, commercial to the east. There's nothing to the west, but it has an urban service and commercial land use. And to the north, it's R1. It still remain the R1, but I don't think they'd be required to put anything in there as of yet.
Okay.
Until development took place.
Any other questions of staff from the board?
I do. I'm confused when I look at the maps. Well, first
It's
of all,
not on.
Not on again?
I can go back to.
I'm on, I'm just not close enough. When I look at the maps and I look at the sketch of what was being built there, it looks to me like this building is totally opposite of the way it's built.
Are you looking at the site plan that they provided? I'm not sure what's in this. Let me look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the orientation of the building on this plan that I'm looking at is east and west, and it's built north and south.
If I'm not mistaken, that site plan was really faded to the southern portion. That tire store that's currently being built is on that southern part of the parcel. It's just very faded. We tried to scan it in as best we could.
That's parking behind it.
That's parking back there?
Looks like parking.
That looks like the bays of a store.
Let's-
That's why I'm at, this is, what I'm looking at is incorrect.
You mind if I take a peek at that?
He's not looking at what you've got on the screen.
Right.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've got that too, but I'm looking at that.
That's your existing tire store right there. That's what's being built.
That's being built right here?
This is what's proposed.
Say
Okay,
what?
so-
Show me on this.
Would you put that map up so everyone can see what we're talking about up here?
A monitor.
Yeah.
Now I'm confused.
Well, that's, when I looked at that, I was totally confused.
Madam Chairman, if I may clarify,
Please.
are we referring to the conceptual plan that was part of the application stamped April 26th?
Yes.
Okay. So
It's all right, go right ahead.
that building that's shown on there is what would be proposed. The current construction right now is a north-south orientation
Okay.
for the tire outlet building.
So what we're looking at on there is behind it.
Correct. It would be north of that building that's in construction.
Okay, and then the portion of that property that's got a, well, it's
There it
evidently
is.
not the same property.
If you were to draw a line through this right here, that would be the tire store.
Okay.
And this would be what's proposed.
Okay.
This is all one parcel.
It's all one rezoning.
Right.
And then this is, what is this, retention area?
It's just going to remain retention, and it's going to remain zone. The zoning is just going to take place on this sliver all the way across here.
Okay,
And down.
okay.
Where is it on this map?
There's the current tire store in the red, and what's being proposed in the green.
But, okay, we're only talking this piece.
Yeah, we're talking the entire piece.
What, not this piece?
No, not that.
That piece is part of it.
Tire store's up here in the red.
Mhm.
And they want to build a warehouse, what you're calling a warehouse in the back. Okay.
It's still one parcel, but it's one of those that had dual zoning and dual land use.
So basically, the tire store
Yeah, it's currently C2 in the front, that front parcel. They're rezoning everything to C3. Yeah.
And we've already permitted the tire store.
It's under
Okay.
construction.
Yeah, I know it's done.
Power in today.
But we're changing the zoning of the tire store and whatever's left behind it.
We're making it consistent zoning. We're
Yes.
making it all consistent.
There will be some residential that remains to the north.
Right.
It's all one parcel right now, and part of it's zoned C2, another part is zoned R1. Only the immediate area that the tire outlet is being built on right now is zoned C2. So that's going to C3, or that would go to C3, and then a portion that's shown in the survey that they provided would also be changed to C3. And it, just to clarify, warehousing is not permitted in C3, so it would be for ancillary storage for that tire outlet. So it couldn't be like a warehousing facility where they have a distribution center or anything like that.
Well, in the presentation that I just listened to, I understand a warehouse, and my concept of a warehouse is this room and there's nothing in this room. That's a warehouse. But we said we're gonna be doing mechanic work and stuff in this warehouse?
Well, it further expands upon the automobile and vehicular repair, what's allowed there. We're currently, C2 only allows for tire, battery, and oil. So it would expand upon those uses, what would be allowed. It just excludes body repair, auto body repair.
Madam Chair, I can address that as well. I would look at that building as a commercial building with all C3 uses. So rather than looking at it as a warehouse, because warehousing is not permitted, I would look at it as a commercial building with multiple units in it for renting out spaces to other entities or.
It's a separate commercial building that will be built on that same property.
Right.
Okay.
Well, with the zoning that we're looking at here, what kind of vehicles would be allowed to be serviced and worked on there?
Not heavy vehicles. I think there's a restriction on heavy vehicles in C3. I'm nearly
It
certain of it.
specifies passenger vehicle.
So passenger vehicles, trucks,
Okay, so it's like pickups and cars and
as
things
in
like
pickup
that,
trucks,
but not
right.
tractors.
No.
I mean, well, semi-tractors.
correct. C3 currently, right, it's passenger vehicles, so we wouldn't consider tractors a passenger vehicle.
And that section that's going to remain residential is still part of the main parcel. Why are we not making everything C3?
The applicant did not want to change that portion to C3. The applicant simply stated that that was the only portion that they wanted to change at the present moment. And R1 is compatible with the land use that they have, so, and in addition to that, there were wetlands north of that as well, so it's unlikely that the entire parcel will ever be fully developed unless they mitigate.
I just guess my question is, why are we not being consistent with an entire parcel when we're trying to go through and clean up some of that happened in the past?
Right. Simply because the request was not to do that.
Okay.
So there really isn't, you can have, one of the difficulties of the single zoning districts that we have versus like a mixed-use zoning district is that you have to have lines like that where you envision mixed use in the future. So if there were to be residential right now, other than a PUD, we could not accomplish it other than by having those lines like that.
Okay.
Well, what's being proposed is more desirable for the neighbor, is it not?
What do you?
To leave that section as residential?
Oh, you mean
good
leaving
buffer.
the residential, yes. I mean, it's, it really doesn't make much of a difference because the buffer is still required along the zoning line, but they're leaving it undisturbed, so, for the time being, of course. They'd have to come back for another zoning
It
action.
would have to be rezoned to do anything commercial on it anyhow.
Correct.
So, and plus it is wetlands. Okay, any other questions for staff at this point?
That would go along that residential, I mean, it seems like to me it would be a moot point right now, but if they ever did do residential in the future, it could be, so.
What are we zoning?
I think it's a type 20B, but I'll look at it now.
You're correct.
Yes? Okay.
I thought we were leaving.
So
this
20-foot wide with the same components.
Well, if they took 20 foot out of that area for a buffer,
See, that's where the,
in their C3 that they're doing, would that leave enough room for a car to drive? Because it doesn't look like
They want to build a warehouse.
40
They're
feet.
gonna build it here in the yellow.
it look like there's a little strip that
Yeah.
connects back over to Master.
You mean on the C3 property?
Yes.
If they did, so that property, that's where the difficulty comes in, and it's not a difficulty, but it's something that we would have to look at the development review process, because the C3 zoning is what has to contain the buffer. So there's a 20-foot strip that would have to remain undisturbed.
What I'm saying is if they took 20 foot out of that connection to Masters,
They don't
there
have much
wouldn't
left.
be enough room to drive.
They'd have to look at the site again and potentially rework the site.
So we need to make that strip wider.
Potentially.
Okay, Mr. Hafner, you had a question?
yeah, I'm confused, which is obvious. Where exactly is the property line of the property that we're looking at right now? What is the little green line on there? Is that a part of this parcel?
That's the northern boundary of the parcel.
The red is the part they want to rezone. They want to leave the,
They want, this would remain.
Yeah, that part right up there
Yes.
would remain. The northern portion that's just outlined in black.
the red outlined is the,
But the red is what they want to rezone. And they want to use that little flagpole section to have ingress egress, but they would have to put a buffer up there.
Yeah, the red is just the boundary of what they're rezoning. It's not the actual parcel lines.
Okay,
It's part of the parcel lines, but it's not the actual parcel lines. It's just the area they want to rezone.
okay. Well-
And what kind of buffering is going to be required along the western boundary of all of this?
Same thing, isn't it?
The western boundary would have, I can't recall right now what the zoning is to the west, but,
It's R1 and commercial, C2.
so with C2, it'd be a type 10A buffer, 10-foot wide with just a fence or a wall or vegetation. And then the type 20B along the residential, single-family residential would be the same as discussed previously.
Have 20 feet in there.
Right.
And the same would go on the south side. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
The south side's gonna be the road.
Oh, yeah, it's outside.
I mean the east side. But, yeah, yeah, the east side.
That's on Masters.
Over here.
All right. Any other questions of staff?
Just one other.
Absolutely, Mr. Danzler?
On that little corner piece that, I forget what's there, is it a bank?
Yes.
Yeah, is there gonna be a required buffer between the drive and the bank?
No, sir. So,
Bank and there's no required buffer between the bank and them at all?
there would be perimeter screening required. And in the case of the tire outlet, for instance, the comprehensive plan requires that where you have a screening or buffering requirement, that you preserve the existing native vegetation that exists on the site. If you've noticed, there's a portion there that they've saved, and that separates the view of the tire outlet shop and all of the bays from the bank between the road, which is just a private road. So where they have existing vegetation that would meet it, they would be required to keep it.
I have one question for,
Mr. Schwing?
I'm not sure if it's for staff or it's for the applicant.
Well, ask it for staff, and if we have it for the applicant, we'll wait.
All right, I'm looking at the zoning map as well as the aerial. Okay? The zoning shows commercial up front on 17, and then residential, and then we're gonna draw a line and we got more residential to the north. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is correct, yeah.
And we're proposing to build another structure besides the tire store?
Yes.
Correct.
And that's gonna go
To the-
probably in the residential, the yellow part.
Yep,
To the
yellow
north of where the tire store is.
Yes.
And it will be in the newly zoned C3 area.
Right.
Right there.
Right here.
That's good.
Okay.
Okay?
Now, you're proposing a build, over there on Moody Road, that industrial piece we got all the way down, is that in the city or us?
The industrial
Little
piece?
Industrial park,
The industrial park,
there close to where the airport,
south of the airport,
That's probably city.
I think that's a city.
that's actually the county. It's an enclave in the county.
okay? And that's the type of building that you're talking about where you could have auxiliary.
Well, we'll ask that of the applicant. But
I
it
think
doesn't
the
matter what they're gonna
applicant-
put on it. All they have to do is meet the C3 requirement. They can put anything on there they want to for any purpose as long as it meets the C3 requirement. All we're doing is looking at the land and the zoning for the land. We're not approving a building or anything at this point. That goes to DRC.
Well, we have no C3 zoning anywhere there, correct?
Yes, we have C3 in the salmon color. The dark pink is C3.
The bank,
It's C2, I'm sorry.
there is no C3.
There's no C3, but everything's going to
We want to
C3.
make our C2 and our residential C3
That's what the applicant has
put-
requested.
to put another structure. So my concern is that other structure. I mean, if we're going to spot zone, I mean, I have no problem making it commercial, but I may have a problem going from C2 to C3 for something else that's coming, and I don't know what that something else is.
Is that something we have purview over?
It's something that you can consider, because you have to consider the highest use that would go in C3. So,
And we have to remember, we just recommended to the county commission a C4 rezoning right across the street.
I understand.
Okay, so this is a commercial area, so we've got C2, C3, C4, right there within a mile, half a mile, quarter of a mile of each other, so. Other
When the
questions?
applicant comes out, I do want to explore what we're trying to put.
Well,
Even though I don't need to know what it is, I want to know.
well, and that's, Madam Chairman, if I may, that is something that can certainly be looked at as we explore the land development code and we look at overlays for our corridors. I think if the concern is aesthetics and what the buildings will look like, it's a shared concern, and it's something that we can explore at the land development code
Right.
rewrite. Now, if there's a concern also for this corridor as it develops, which it has been developing pretty quickly, I mean, we've been receiving development review applications that haven't required a rezone, and there's an urgent concern about what this corridor will look like, then that's something that the Planning Commission can recommend to the Board of County Commissioners to direct staff to look at an overlay sooner than the completion of the,
LDC.
right.
okay.
Well, what concerns me, we've got a tire store that we have permitted, and it's basically probably 99%. I don't know if it's been CO'd yet or not,
Yeah.
but it's definitely, from my perspective, pretty daggone close. It's sitting on the highway. We've got a building that we're proposing with change of zoning, and we've got the little dog leg coming out to Masters to give it access. There's no, I don't believe they're trying to access it off of 17 where they've got their tire store.
Right.
There's enough room to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well,
We've got a good driveway there. Think of it as a little strip mall turned perpendicular to Highway 17.
I'm thinking of it similar to what's over on Moody Road.
Well, we're not dealing with Moody Road, we're dealing with this right now.
Well, I understand, but somebody ought to be able to tell me if that's what we're talking about, something similar to that. I mean, you got a red iron building put up and you're gonna have bays in it, you're gonna have, Joel's gonna have a bay, I'm gonna have a bay, you know, and somebody else is gonna have a bay, and we're all gonna be doing something different, even though it's related to cars.
Well, it's all gonna be a commercial property, and they have the authority to put whatever commercial enterprise there they want. They do have to go through DRC, and they do have to get final permitting approval, and if necessary, they have to get a special use permit. All we're dealing with is the zoning issue. Do we rezone it to C3?
Yeah.
Or do we say, no, we're not gonna rezone it, we're gonna leave it like it is?
Ken brings up a good point, though. Could somebody, and I should know this as long as I've been on this board, what are some of the possible uses in C3 zoning?
I'll read through them.
Yeah, it's in our packet.
Is it it's in the staff report, yes. I'll
Yep.
pull that up real quick.
Yeah,
I can read through them, Gabriel, if you want. I got it pulled up.
Go ahead, Joe.
8.
So some of the uses that would be allowed by right in C3 would be retail sales general, retail sales
Yep.
food, services, office, a club, commercial recreation and entertainment outdoor.
okay. We can't really hear you, Joe.
Okay. I'll start over real quick. So some of the uses are retail sales general, retail sales food, services, office, club, commercial recreation and entertainment outdoor, commercial recreation and entertainment indoor, lodging, cultural uses, civic uses, religious facility, emergency services, child and adult daycare center, passenger vehicle sales, rental and service, excluding auto body repair shops. That's the use that we're seeking here. Overnight recreation, recreational vehicle and boat sales and service, portable building display and sales, many warehouses, a hospital, overnight recreational park, and then there are those uses that require special use permits, such as educational and essential public services, an outdoor auction, auto body repair shops, child and adult daycare center, group residential home, nursing home, assisted living facility, heavy vehicle sales, rental and service, flea market, nightclub, kennel, communication towers, and heavy equipment sales and service.
So that's the C3 possibilities, but
That's with, those last ones I just read off
I guess
with the
that's
use
the
of
thing
a
that
approval of a special use permit.
Permit there, if you can get it, is I see on here the heavy equipment sales and service, heavy vehicle sales, rental and service, that kind of stuff. Boy, if that ever got there, I think it'd be a disaster.
right, and if,
Yeah.
that would have to go before ZBOA for a special use permit.
That's
And
correct.
that would be site-specific, and, yeah.
When you say we just did C4 on the previous case, I understand that, but we had C4 that we were just expanding.
Right, but it's still in the
mistaken.
proximity. We're not spot zoning, it's still in the proximity.
I know, but all I did was expand what currently was
Right.
there. I mean, it was adjoining and attached to,
Okay,
under the same ownership.
okay. This will be under the same ownership too, I believe. Any more questions of staff before we move on to bringing the applicant up? We'd like to bring the applicant up. If you would please come forward and tell us your name and your address. And I think we may have some questions for you.
Good. Hi.
You're going to have to really get that microphone
I
right
will.
close.
How's that?
There you go.
Can you hear okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. My name is Alberta Hips, and my address is 1650 Margaret Street, 32204 in Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm here representing Mr. Dave Barron, who owns the tire outlet. And we have done zonings for him in Duval County with the similar, what you are seeing him constructed and what he wants to do with the extension in the back of that, north of the, what's going in right now. And I'm here to answer any questions. I would start out to say that on that buffer in the back, Mr. Barron wanted to make sure that there was plenty of buffer. We know it's wetlands, but it's approximately 418 acres that will remain just the way it is. feet, sorry,
418 feet.
to the north.
Does your land developer feel that there's going to be adequate space for a 20-foot buffer and vehicular access through that dogleg section?
I think he does. He certainly has taken that into consideration, I believe, in the plan. On your site plan, I can't read the width of that access road, so, but he is, his contractor is certainly used to all those
If it
requirements.
becomes necessary to widen that access and move that line between residential and C3 further to the north, would your owner be amenable to that?
Yes,
Okay. So that's something that would be thoroughly looked at DRC. Is that correct, Gabriel?
Right, but if the line has to be moved, they'd have to come back for another rezone
Okay.
to amend that line.
All right. Do we have the dimensions on that area?
Dimensions?
Survey, it says 40 feet, 40.02 feet.
That's not going to give enough room for,
But they do own the other property. They may just have to put it.
but the buffer's got to be on the part that's being zoned C3.
So it is possible, if I may, Madam Chairman, that we can, if they can arrange to keep part of the R1 zone portion in perpetual conservation or undisturbed, we could potentially work with them on that. Normally, it has to be on the portion that's being zoned, but because they own all of the parcel, as long as they never partition that portion off of it, we may be able to work with them on that.
Okay.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that would preserve the 40-foot section 4 driveway.
Right, right. So when we would have a 20-foot wide R1 zone portion that would have to be preserved and could only be done away with if they rezoned the rest of it. So we would look at an agreement like that at the DRC stage.
Understanding that our decision cannot be based on what you want to put there,
I understand.
can you describe to us what you want to put there?
Yes, I can. It's an ancillary building that could handle window tinting and, small vehicle repair from time to time, and any kind of, maybe a detailing, not car wash or anything like that, but detailing, things that would, people that would come into the tire outlet and may need some other ancillary things done to their car could have that done in that back area. And we do not consider it under the definition of a warehouse of a big, we consider it looking much like the tire store outlet with the bays, and the specific things could be done in each bay. And then tire storage, and I want to emphasize no tire distribution at all, but tire storage, because we don't want any outside storage, of course.
There wouldn't be tires
Right.
piled up outside or anything like that?
Right.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do they plan for the main access to be off of 17, and then maybe that's just a,
Right now, they plan for the access to be off that shared easement with the bank,
okay, off of 17?
off of 17.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant?
I have a question she may be able to answer and may not. I'm looking at a wetlands map. Are you familiar with that?
No, sir.
You want to bring it up, Zachary?
Yeah, that's part of yours.
Part of the area that's going to remain residential is
the
in
wetlands
wetlands.
map.
It don't show it. I don't see wetlands there.
There are no wetlands on that parcel that are delineated on the National Wetlands Inventory, which is what we use, but the field survey has indicated wetlands on the parcel.
On
So
the small one.
that National Wetlands Inventory map that we use is many times, when it has them on there, it's normally right, but when it doesn't have them on there, that doesn't mean that there aren't wetlands on there. So they would have to have a delineation.
So this one shows some wetlands.
Yes.
Okay.
the majority of that northern portion would be.
It was the survey, I'm sorry to have interrupted you, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because it
The-
looks like the dog leg going out. I see the dog leg, and you got, according to this, the wetlands is going into the dog leg.
Sure is.
And I
Right,
don't think
so-
I can build a,
They could not build through those wetlands unless they mitigated.
well, have we done that? I mean, that's part of the thing you want us to change.
We don't deal with that. That goes with DRC.
And the St. Johns River Water Management District would be the permitting agency for that.
Right. And that
I
would,
know we don't deal with it, but I mean, I'm looking at the thing that shows me where you're proposing, and you got wetlands going right through it. Or you're going through the wetlands, let's put it that way. Is that correct?
I don't know, sir.
I think this is something that when they go before DRC, St. John's Water Management District is going to flag and require mitigation for those wetlands if it's going to be used as a driveway.
And we would require a delineation at the DRC stage. A delineation of wetlands on the site, and also any permits that they're pulling for endangered species, habitats.
But you're asking us to give you, or give them C3 in the wetlands.
That's
Well,
what they've
there's R1
requested.
in the wetlands now, so you've got dual permitting agencies here. We allow certain uses. St. Johns River Water Management District would only allow it if they received a mitigation permit. So, there just isn't a whole lot of, what am I trying to say? The zoning doesn't affect the wetlands. So if what you're saying is that those wetlands should be conservation zoning, that's another thing.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I feel I have extreme difficulty in coming up with C3 zoning for wetlands. I mean, that may lead to some indication that we're condoning wetlands and development.
We've got C3 zoning and wetlands, we've got commercial zoning that include wetland areas all over this county.
I know, but you're asking me to change it now. I mean, if it was there before we had wetlands designation, that's not a problem. But
We're not sure if that is correct.
I mean, that's some,
That could be the opinion of the surveyor, it's wetlands.
right.
well, that's
That's
sort
not
of
an
what we gotta go
official-
by, what's what they submitted to us.
That's not the official wetland survey that will come with Water Management District. We don't have anything to say about the wetlands. We're dealing with the zoning category for this property.
As I've said, I feel strong about zoning something C3, knowing that it is wetlands.
Well, we will note that and make sure it's part of the record.
We did that one at Rice Creek and they had wetlands on it,
That's right.
and we known it was wetlands in the backside of the property. I don't remember which property that was, but
Yes.
that was the same thing. He says, we can't touch it, it's got wetlands, but it's still C3.
Commissioner Swing.
It was industrial, that's what it was.
Right,
Thank
but
you,
this
Aaron.
is something we have to do on a regular basis. Are there any other questions of the applicant? Yes, sir.
I've got one. I'm not sure how to ask the question. One of the things that I've heard our county commission express in the past is this is supposed to be a premier entryway into Putnam County. And I believe the particular commissioner, which I won't mention any names, said something to the effect, are we going to create a Phillips Highway here? And frankly, when I look at what's being proposed here, it's a Phillips Highway. So, I think we have to look at it from that perspective as well. Even though it's set back off the road a little bit, I think the tire store is great. I mean, it's a nice looking building, but I could see what's going to go on behind there. But,
Is the building that you're proposing going to be constructed in the similar manner as the
Yes,
tire store? It's going to be the same kind of facade, same kind of construction?
that's my understanding. Mr. Barron really is sensitive to things looking very neat and clean, and what he's done in other places look very similar to the tire store, what you're seeing now, even with the bays.
Okay.
Where I have a hard time with Jerry, and I'm not trying to convince you, but we just did C4 right across the street from here.
Mm-hmm.
So what difference does it, I mean, if you're trying to not have Phillips Highway, what different? I
See,
don't see how this
the
is affecting
C4
any
zoning
more
that
than
we're talking
the C4
about
that we just
is
did.
not on the primary roadway going, that is part of the premier entry into Palatka and Putnam
I'm
County.
with you, I mean, I'm all
That's where the
about,
problem is.
I understand what you're saying on that, but I
Yeah.
don't see that.
Any other questions of our applicant? Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
At this point, I would ask, are there any people in the audience who would like to voice their opinion for or against? Mrs. McClendon?
Is there any way I can stay here? Can you hear me?
We got to have you on the microphone. And I know, it's a bummer. I have the same kind of problem.
Can I take her this one?
Take her that one.
Here, stay right there. Oh, he's
We,
got one.
we've got one for you. You can sit back down.
Oh, we got all kinds of
As
microphones.
one cripple to another, Vivian, we'll bring you one.
I need to move, I know I need to move anyway,
No, you can use,
Uh-oh.
I'm sitting too long in one position, so I need to move.
okay. Take your time.
Had knee surgery 3 weeks ago.
Well, you're
Okay.
doing fantastic.
I am doing very well, thank you.
You're going to have to put that microphone right at your face.
My name is Vivian Oliver McLendon. I live at 121 Sunset Point Road, East Palatka. I own the adjoining property to all of this that goes from the highway all the way to the river. I had 3 questions when I came today. 2 of them have been answered about the buffer and about the fencing. My other question, and I don't know that y'all are the ones to answer it, but I have a question. The address given, when I owned the whole piece of property, I owned the 31 acres and then sold off the corner to the birds, and we did a PUD. When I owned that, I had an address given to me for that whole highway frontage of 144 South Highway 17. That now is being used in the application for this tire store for that address. My question is, what's the address of the rest of my property? Or does it go with that, or how did they get my address that was for the whole piece, for that one piece?
I can maybe help you on that if you want me to.
Let's let staff answer that
All right,
question.
let them help.
So the one piece is just given one address.
Yeah, the whole piece, at one time, I used to lease a section of it to Severett's Tree Farm when they did Christmas trees, and I had to have an application, we had to apply for a permit, and they had to have an address, so I went wherever, I can't remember if it was post office or where I went, but I got an address for that parcel, because there was no building on the parcel, it was all vacant.
The new development would have to have a different address. So as that is,
It would
Well,
go
is
through
it-
emergency services, wouldn't it?
sorry?
Emergency services would handle that, wouldn't it?
Yes, and is this portion intended to be, if I may ask the applicant a question, is it intended to be parceled out?
You'll have one address for the whole,
Right, so then I'm not sure how 911 addressing would handle that. They probably would require something like a Unit 1 and a Unit Number 2, so that emergency services would know exactly where to go if there were an emergency.
what is the address of the bank?
The
Is it a different,
address,
it's a
It's a
different
different
number?
address, they have a different address.
it's
like-
148 South Highway
Yeah,
17.
it's
Okay.
148, but the whole piece, when I
It's
owned the whole
144.
piece together, was 144 South Highway 17. So now their application is coming in at 144 South
144.
Highway 17, so I'm wondering what's the rest of my
Oh.
460-some feet?
It's there.
You know, there's no building on it now, but
Yes, ma'am, but
I
that's
was
important.
required to get an address, and now that one's being used. I just didn't know if that's a problem with their application, or if that's something I
Yeah,
need to
they'll
go.
give you a new one. And Gabriel,
Well,
that'll be something you all will handle in details, won't it?
Right, and I'm not sure, if I may, I don't understand what you're referring to. There's 21.92 acres with your homestead on it.
No, that's not my homestead.
Oh, okay.
That's where I grew up. That is my home where I grew up, that
Okay.
property, but that is, not, I live next to it in Sunset Point, which is my homestead.
Okay, so that property, the 21.92 acres is assigned 118 Ferry Road, East Palatka.
Well, that's what the house down there on the river is assigned, but when they did the highway frontage, when I had to have the permit for the tree farm, they had to have an address for that highway frontage, and they gave me 144 South Highway 17.
Oh, it was likely a temporary address for that. If it was
20 years ago.
right.
Just from my experience, is because that was all one property, they're only given that piece of property one address. And now that you parceled that's how it goes. So
Okay.
you'll get the next address.
I'll get the
that's on
next
that
address down. Do
Yeah.
I need to go to emergency service?
Another address.
All right, is this something I need to do, take a step to go to emergency services, or something that y'all do to, I mean,
No,
what
this
what do I
what,
do next?
this will not affect you in any way. This,
Okay.
the subject property is entirely owned by BWT Property Management, and that will retain that 144 South Highway
Okay,
17.
so I won't use that address again. If I decide to rent out or lease out that frontage, I'd have to get a separate address.
A new temporary address.
Likely, a
Address,
temporary
whatever.
address issued by
No, and at my
911.
farm, after a while, they gave me the whole bunch of numbers when they redid the 911 stuff, because they had my property reversed one time. So then they gave me 351 through 479 was all my numbers. So then when I needed a permit to get a meter put in for a well, I had to show them about where it was, and then they gave me a number in between that.
Well, that was my only concern.
I think
agree
you're
with
fine.
the zoning
You'll
and
just have
everything.
to get you different numbers.
Yeah,
You
okay.
own a bunch of you should own all the numbers through there.
Well, they just gave me that one number.
Yeah,
They've
but I
never
mean-
given me other numbers, but they can come up with another number, 'cause
Oh,
there's
yeah, there's
nothing
plenty
else
of
there.
numbers. You got it all, so.
That was my only concern. I
You're going to be
appreciate it.
taken care of very well, Mrs.
I
McClendon.
appreciate it, and I someday may be back before you. I don't
We'd love
know.
to have you.
But I have no problem with the other things, and as I said,
Okay.
Neil answered my questions about the buffer and the fencing.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak either for or against this application? This is your opportunity. We don't bite. Okay, hearing none, I'll bring it back to the board for consideration, motion and action and discussion. Okay, Joel has made a proper motion for approval. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Joey has seconded. All right, now you have a question, Mr. Hafner.
Yeah, my question is, once again, I should already know this. What kind of outside storage will be allowed at this facility?
None.
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 None at all.
In the C3 zoning as well?
None in C3 zoning. C4 zoning allows it as a special use.
Right.
None in C3.
So everything in 3C or C3 is not exterior
Right,
type stuff.
right.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign.
No. No.
Okay, we have 2 noes. Mr. Hafner and Mr. Schwing have voted against this. Everyone, the chair votes aye, everyone else has voted for it. Okay. All righty. This will go before the Board of County Commissioners on August 23rd, and we wish you luck. And the building that's currently going up does look nice, so we appreciate that. Are you building it?
No. Even if I'm not building it and Joel's not building it, it is still a nice looking building.
We thank you.
I'm not building it either.
Neither is Ken, so.
Okay, under all business, can you give us an update on the RFP situation with the consultant for the Land Development Code?
Yes, ma'am. The rank order that the committee suggested to the Board of County Commissioners was approved. So now administration and planning staff are in negotiations with the first selected, first ranked firm
Okay?
on budget items and scope.
Do we have any sort of a target date, ETA,
A target date of what?
of starting or of signing a contract?
Not really. Right now, it might take another month of negotiations. I'm not entirely certain. But once those negotiations are done, I can see it starting within about 3 months, but I'm not entirely certain. It may start sooner. So,
Okay, all righty. Any other old business to come before the board?
I would like to make a suggestion on that. Since there's an election right now, it would only make sense that you wouldn't start on the comp plan again until after
LDC.
whoever's on the
Right.
new board, because to
But we got through it eventually.
Well, COVID was the problem.
We're not gonna get finished before that election, don't worry about it.
Oh, no, we've got 2 years. We will be still, we'll probably be looking at this when we have the 2024s. So, all right. August, we do have 2 cases that are on the docket to come before the board. I will not be at the August meeting. I'm having surgery on Friday on my ankle, and we'll kind of be out of commission for about 6 to 8 weeks.
August 10th.
I think it's August 10th, yes.
And those are tentative cases, so if they don't end up responding within the required time, then there may not be that number or any cases, but we'll be sure to notify you.
In the case that happens, that's fine. If I'm not here, then Ms. Fortner will take the meeting. So we do need to approve any new business that needs to come before the board. Just be aware that we do have apparently 2 vacancies on the board right now. Joe Roberts is no longer on the board, and we're still waiting for something from the District 4 representative on the board. We're still in limbo with that position.
Did Joe resign?
Joe's no longer on the board. And so that's what we're dealing with there, but we do really want to get that full board in place before we start working on the land development code. I'll talk to Mr. Pickens about Joe's position, which is an at-large, and see who's the next person to appoint, and see if they can't get that appointment working. And I've tried to reach Commissioner Harvey today, but I wasn't able to reach him about his position. So I'll continue trying on that. Mr. Perry, do you have anything you need to bring before us?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay. Anyone else have anything that they need to bring before the board for the good of the order? We do need to approve the minutes from April 13th.
I so move to approve the minutes of April 13th.
Okay, Mr. Froelich has made a proper motion.
Second.
Mr. Hafner seconded. Do I hear any discussion, any changes to the minutes? All righty. Please, all those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Thank you very much. At this point, it's 5:18, and I will adjourn this meeting.
Cool.